Thank you, the Sports Planet. Thank you, Shruti. Thank you, Rishi, for getting us all together under this one roof. And today, in this session, we're going to speak about something that is so important. It's got to do with saving lives. The highest level of impact that you can have as a layman, as a doctor, as support staff for to anybody's life. So we're going to speak about cardiac issues, and my first question is to you, sir. Uh, we are seeing an alarming rise in sudden cardiac arrest, sudden cardiac deaths in like the active young population. So, like, what are the factors that is contributing to all of this?
Thanks for the question. Hello. Okay, thank you for the question, Doc. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sure it's a post-lunch session and it would be very difficult to focus at present. So, before I answer the question, let me start with one of my memories when I was a cardiology resident. One of my teachers was doing a presentation on lifestyle diseases, and the first slide he threw up on the screen was what is the most powerful weapon of mass human destruction a man has ever created. And the next thing which he showed up was a fighter plane which is dropping an atom bomb, and we all seem to have agreed to him because it kills millions of people. But as he ran through his presentation, as he revealed the facts and figures and the statistics, we are all awestruck to know in the end, believe me, the last slide what he showed was a picture of a burger and a samosa. Okay, so these things have killed more people, has caused more fatalities than a nuclear bomb would do, and it continues to do yet. Okay, so the point I want to make is urbanization on the global scale is just changing the social and the environmental landscape. This has led to tremendous improvement in the quality of life, in the standard of living. At the same time, in a continuous quest for success, we tend to adapt to unhealthy lifestyles, poor dietary choices, and high stress levels. At the same time, when we are seeing younger and younger people hitting the gym, we are the next obesity capital of the nation. We are already the diabetic capital of the world. Okay, so what are the reasons for these things or the sudden cardiac deaths in young people? So to understand this, I'll just try and briefly tell you what heart is all about. So it's a marvelous organ the God has created. It beats 70 times in a minute or 4,000 times in an hour and say more than a lakh times in a day. So it's a complex integration of three different systems. One is the electrical activity of the heart. Second is the heart muscle as a pump which circulates the blood. And third is the coronary arteries which supplies blood to the heart. Uh, to make it more simpler, let me give an analogy of a car. I'm sure almost everyone has driven a car once in a lifetime. So, like when you start a car, there's an ignition, we start, the engine starts running, and there's a petrol flow which happens. The same way, in the heart, there's an ignition called the pacemaker of the heart sitting in one of the chambers. It creates an electrical activity. It causes the heart muscle to pump, the blood starts circulating, and the heart drives its own blood supply through the coronary arteries. Okay, so we call it pumps, pipes, and wires to be simple. So whenever we are looking at any cardiac death, so it's problems with one of these three systems. There can be a problem with the electrical activity of the heart. So these are genetic diseases where some people are born with, say, channelopathies we call it. So this is some rhythm disturbances in the heart like WPW syndrome, long QT syndrome, and many such like this arrhythmogenic right ventricular hyperplasia. So these are the genetic problems which exist. When we talk about the heart muscle as a pump, there are some people who are born with large hearts. We call it hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And lastly, the most important and the biggest killer nowadays is the coronary artery disease, which causes heart attacks due to blocks in the arteries. So any problem with any of the three systems can lead to sudden cardiac death. Okay, and so when we talk about coronary artery disease, we do a lot of health checkups. So someone would be happy having a normal ECG, a normal stress test, a normal echo. But believe me, an ECG can be normal for a person who is having a 90% block in his arteries. An echo can be normal for the same person. A The stress test can be normal for someone who is having a 50, 60 or a 70% block. Okay, so these are just screening methods, but this doesn't give us a clean sheet to go back and follow the bad lifestyles. So, see, when I talk about blockages, no one is born with a 90% block in the artery. Okay, it starts as a small plaque of 5-10%, and it takes decades to reach to 90%. The bad thing is happening when a bad gene and our poor lifestyle clubs together, it can cause a 5 or a 10% plaque to rupture. So when a plaque ruptures, there's an open wound inside the artery. Like when we get a cut on the skin, after 2 days we see a black scab coming. Same way, inside the artery, when a plaque ruptures, there's a wound created. The body tries to patch up the wound with platelets, and it suddenly clogs the whole artery within few seconds to few minutes. Okay, so the reason I'm explaining you all this because this is the leading cause, and there are more and more number of people who are suffering from heart attacks in the most productive years of their life. To sum up, we should always know our numbers. So, what is my blood pressure? What is my sugar readings? What is my say cholesterol readings? So, this is what, like we service a car once in a year, we have a heart which will run throughout the life. So, we should be able to screen ourselves once in a year at least, and those specifically those who are having a strong family history of heart disease like heart attacks at a young age less than 40 years, or those who are diabetic or smokers. So in these people, definitely the incidence of heart attacks is rising. I hope I have answered the question now.
Definitely, sir. The in the era of junk food and all of these things, especially like during the COVID times when everybody was just staying at home and like we're comparatively sedentary, things have started to rise. Dr. Kenjom sir, you work with a lot of elite athletes. How do you foresee the situation? What are the measures you take from your end to make sure that the most fittest population of our country, are not going to deal with something as severe as this?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, and thank you, Dr. Ravi, for at least building a good base to understand. So he already mentioned to you that it's either the electrical or the structure or something happening inside, which can be genetics, and of course lifestyle. It's one of the killers. And besides the burger, nowadays sitting is the new smoking. Smoking has been a little bit curbed because of so many government rules. Like you don't smoke on the aircraft, you don't smoke in a vehicle. So passive smoking is a little bit out, but again, then the pollution, AQI is very poor. So there's so many environmental factors also. So before I actually answer the question, so giving this background, first and foremost, the advantage of me being in the uniform services is that we can actually implement what is being ordered, because otherwise then they will not get their clearance, they will not get their promotion. We don't even send them on leave. So for example, whenever we send, simple example, away from cardiology, when we send somebody from an endemic area, say malaria, so we do all the screening for malaria, dengue and everything, and we give all the prophylactic medications, like you give immunization, and then we send the person on chutti, and we have everything marked and registered and on the data to check. Then only his adjutant sanctions the leave. So in the same way, we have an annual medical examination. So I feel at the younger age, we have annual medical examination. And there was a time when our department put in as in above the age of 35, lipids have to be done, mandatory. But now we're doing it for all. And I am, because working in sports, and for anybody who's going for like commando courses, anything high intensity, they need to get at least an ECG, an echo, and the other enzymes done before we clear them. And I'm just talking about normal soldiers. I'm not talking coming yet to my athletes. So this is at least the base on which we work on, and we are able to prevent a lot of deaths. After that also, education. You educate that if there's a chest pain, we give them, aspirin and all that stuff. But at the same time, we should not take it rapidly. That's why little knowledge is dangerous. Through the Instagram, through the people tend to take the information, which is again wrong. So having this background, what we do with athletes generally is, I'm adding that annual medical examination to it already for them. And then before every competition, we have a pre-competition testing. And that's for almost every sport. Before we used to not, maybe because of when so many teams are there, then maybe archery and shooting, maybe I would see them later. But then that doesn't exempt them, because we realize that actually archery and shooting are a little bit unfit. So like sir, you said that plagues वेग्स इनके में उसमें ज़्यादा होगा. You know, it's not that active physically. So what we used to do normally is do all this for the combat sports or high activity sports or middle distance. So what we do is, so we have a screening. For just to give you all a hint, every one of us, in fact, like I said yesterday, I had visited DY Patel High Performance Center. Sir was showing me the forms, and you know he had that system down also, both for non-athletes and for athletes. So in the same way, but it's not available online. You know, even our protocols won't be available online. But what you can go is go to the FIFA website. Go to the FIFA website, and they have the entire gamut of tests, you know, including musculoskeletal. So whether you'd be fit for the thing. So what we do is we have a pre-season screening, and based on the periodization of training, we test them accordingly. Then we have the pre-competition testing. Okay. So in that now I'll just stick to cardiology now. So what we do is I do mandatory minimum. Of course, your CBC, even that gives you a message, that gives you some information. 12 lead ECG. Not that old school ECG could be for a formality. No, a proper 12 lead ECG. Number two, 2D cardiac, echo, mandatory. And if we have access to it, nowadays we do stress reports. All right. So this is the screening minimum. So if there's anything wrong we find in the screening, then we speak to the cardiologist, and then we then hand over the patient to the cardiologist to then see if further tests are required. But that will be done in the hospital. On the field, definitely your athletes will be passed whether you're on the ground. If you're a physio, team physio, doctor's not available, please get these tests done. You don't need a doctor's signature to get these tests done. You can write screening for cardiac screening, and if you want some authority, you download the FIFA medical forms, and they have the pre-assessment or pre-season entire screening. That entire thing on cardiology is there. So like I said, it's for every body part, but we stick to cardiology here. So that is the screening that we do. And of course, we do the lipids. And because for performance, we do the cortisol and everything for performance. So we kind of then correlate everything. So that is the mandatory thing. And if anybody is found overweight, or say someone is saying, नहीं नहीं मैं तो सर 100 किलो में खेलता हूँ, I said कोई बात नहीं, हमारा न्यूट्रिशनिस्ट के पास जाएंगे, we'll do the BCA. So if the BCA says कि नहीं तो मैं तो सर तगड़ा हूँ, ये कुछ नहीं, तेरा 60% body fat है, इतना बड़ा शरीर में इतना फैट, सोचो इतनी छोटी सी खून की नलकी में तुम्हारा घी क्या कर रहा है, हाँ? उतना देसी घी का मिठाई. That is the crime. Cold drinks, burgers. So once you do the screening properly, use all the information and the data, sit with the athletes, sit with the coach, work on that. So if that is at least the minimum that we should do. Then of course, because then we can't send 1,000 people to the cardiologist, right? Those who are not suffering. So the screening can be done even by physios, even by nutritionists. So get these basic tests done. So once we do that, then we clear them. Then of course, that also on the ground we do functional testing. So in the functional testing, the yo-yo test, the PEEP test, everything, and then we ask them for the wellness also. Even during the physical activity, we ask them how much is the intensity. You know, you do perceived rate of exertion, RP. So based on that also you see, because then recovery is very important. Then we ensure proper sleep. नीचे लेवल के एथलीट्स का मैं नहीं कर सकता, बट ओलंपिक लेवल एथलीट्स के तो हम 10 बजे उनकी फोन में जब्त कर लेता हूँ. I take it, they can take it back in the morning. So what happens if most of you with athletes also, if you travel, if anybody has traveled with international athletes, the fun is वहाँ सोने का टाइम और यहाँ सवेरा, तो उसका sleep भी compromise होता है. So and look at so many deaths that we see now. There are many other factors. I think my other speakers also speak on it. But I would say that we heard about a lot of deaths where fit थे, smoking नहीं करता था, वो नहीं करता था. But you look, most of them in super driven कि मैं तो 2 ही घंटे सोते थे, 3 ही घंटे सोते, 5 ही घंटे सोते थे. Remember, sleep is very important because the circadian rhythm is very important. यहाँ पे हमारा rest, recovery, and especially if you're working out. If you're working out, if you're not recovering, you're definitely going to damage yourself. And we all know that with the damage of muscles, we have all the CPK and the enzymes, not just the cardiac muscles. So, you know, those things have to be looked into. And the body has a very good system of recovering also itself. So once you detect, definitely individual athlete goes to the cardiologist. Whether we see then whether the ECG changes, like he said, the long QT syndrome, the Buguda syndrome, or say maybe is it myocarditis, or is it a cardiomyopathy? So commonest there is, you know, is hukum. Then what happens is then we rule out whether it's because of electrical, you can say electrical, I won't say imbalances here, I would say electrical diseases basically of the heart, you know. So those things have to be ruled out. So once we see anything change, don't go dadagiri ki mere ko aata hai. Definitely take the clearance of the cardiologist. That is very, very important, because here we're talking about human life. So I won't be interested in winning an Olympic medal and dying the next day. I would prefer to live a comfortable life, fit and healthy life for a long period of time. So we will come to the other questions there also later, whether the athlete can be allowed to play. Some of the findings are normal, like the adaptations to the training, physiological adaptations. Who may have a large heart, we may have a athletic heart, and that also depends on the type of training, whether it's anaerobic training, aerobic training. But that also, if there are, that will be showing in the ECG or in the echo. Get the clearance from the cardiologist, and nowadays we have the sports physiologist also. If you have access, find it, get it done. Do not risk with the athlete's life. We are also responsible for their lives. जो सब कहते हैं ना, जान है तो जहान है. If jaan is still there, we can still help the athlete do other things also. So the other questions can come later. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Explaining the most cost-effective way to save lives. So my next question is to Dr. Pankaj. You train a lot of staff into learning the CPR and everything. You had your own experiences with sudden cardiac arrest and how you've saved lives. So what is your experience, and what is something that you would say like a layman should do if he comes across something like this, and with support staff and going with the team, what is the bare minimum that they should be doing?
So as we already did the CPR workshop that everyone should know, and as Dr. Ravi clearly mentioned the difference between a heart attack and a cardiac arrest, one must definitely understand there are few cardinal signs of cardiac arrest. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's something called agonal breathing, which is one of the cardiac signs in on-field cardiac arrest. If you might have seen, if you can just YouTube the videos of Christian Eriksen and most of the cardiac arrests in football, you might see the agonal breathing correctly. The second thing which I mentioned during the workshop also, if anyone who is working in a sports facility, I would insist your organization to get an AED with you in your kit bag. That has a huge potential in saving lives. And of course, train your staff in ALS and BLS. That would be a great asset. But apart from that, awareness is the key to working on such cases like sudden cardiac arrests. Yeah, that's it. I think most of the questions are answered by them and during the workshop, so I would not repeat it again. Yeah. Just be aware of the situation. Yeah.
Would you like to share something?
Yeah,
so personal experience?
Yeah, sure. So recently, back in on 22nd February 2022, we had an incident where there was a football match going on, and it was a recreational match. The person was a 54-year-old football coach himself. He has a football club in Mumbai. I was working in the clinic and suddenly got a call in the club that there was someone who was collapsed. So I reached there on the scenario and I saw that this person is collapsed. I did ABC protocol and there the agonal breathing has started. And someone in the crowd came to the scene and I was like, okay, we need to start CPR, get the AED, since we already had the AED in place. This lady was telling me, wait, he's breathing, I'm the doctor, don't teach me. I was like, this is not a time to discuss who's the doctor. And we started the CPR. As soon as we got the AED, we applied it. And within, I guess, 2 shocks, we were able to revive him. So quality CPR is not just enough. You need advanced equipment when you're tackling. So then then he was taken to the hospital and the doctors were very surprised. They were shocked that how can he get out of the cardiac arrest, because it's in India it's not easy for you to see out of hospital cardiac arrests being revived. So Yeah, in my personal experience, I would recommend if you're a health professional, just get an AED and your training revised every year. So that will be very essential for all of you. I mean, if there is any other views from the guys, it would be great.
Yeah, my only view here is two things. He's right about the AED is that most of the in FIFA, for example, and they have even contributed money down to the football clubs. Unfortunately, the clubs are not buying the AED. It's mandatory to have the AED even for practice. Even for practice. And they should have CPR qualified people. So what I do, like he said, with my organization, what we do is that's why I said being in uniform services, we are able to implement because the orders are supposed to be followed. We don't do jugaad baji. Okay. So India is very good na jugaad. So IPL ka ticket, nobody will say, look, let me check, I'll buy it for you. मैं कुछ जुगाड़ करता हूँ. So AED and heart में जुगाड़ नहीं करने का. ठीक है. So it's a question of human life. No jugaad there. So the other thing that you do is like, I'm just giving an example of our organization is, my entire sports team, which is with me, including the driver, not of the ambulance, not just of the ambulance, the driver who transport in the bus, the team coaches, the support staff, physios to mandatory, certified, not by me. We teach, but we certify, and we certify through AHA, we certify through a good hospital, and in Delhi, fortunate to have AIMS nearby, so if possible, I definitely get it done with the AIMS Trauma Center. So you can work out, and people are willing to teach, free. And even the fee sometimes is minimal, it's just for the chai, pani, nashta, and the certificate. Remember, don't bother about the certificate, honestly speaking. Bother about the learning. Like he said, a proper CPR is very important. Learning the method. You can save a life. CPR is something that we learn, hoping never to have to use it. But when if it's going to be used, it will save a life. And I'm telling you, the satisfaction is immense. And not only that, no, you're able to save a life. As a doctor also, he's a cardiologist, we know, once Yamraji has taken him, we cannot do anything. We can help the patient he can help as long as the patient is in RAC. Okay? So that is where CPR. In CPR, you're keeping the patient in RAC. You're not confirming, you're keeping him in RAC. I hope you got my analogy. Okay? So, and before every event, what I do is, whoever has worked with me, there are a few people here in the room who's worked with me, we get the mannequins, we collaborate, and we do the mock drills. We even do the mock drills, how much time is the ambulance going to come, in how much time. Pata chala, you are looking for the AED wala banda has gone for lunch. And he's probably locked it somewhere. And then so, because at that time, the moment the athlete collapsed, you should be there. You should be there, and if everybody knows CPR, then you, like you said, if there's a doctor, priority usko de do. If there's a physio, priority usko de do. Whoever is more into the science part, and if nobody else is there, a fellow footballer, a fellow athlete can do the CPR till then the assignment is there. And these cannot be implemented properly if you don't do the drills. You know, like in sports, you want to perform a good forehand, a good bowling, a good fielding, anything, the drills have to be done. So that is where I'll add on him. It says the CPR and AED, even if you're not using it, keep doing the drills off and on, and before a competition, definitely. One more thing I'll add. When I cover events, nobody in India generally takes care of the spectators. वहाँ 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, उनकी medical screening नहीं होता to come for the match. So they get excited. They get, it's the heat. And somebody mentioned here that cricket is very cool because of 10,000 fans. But unfortunately, if you're 56, 57, and you're just happening to have a heart attack, then that same fan and noise is actually going to aggravate the problem. So we also ensure that you have that CPR cover with the spectators also. So that is what I would add to what he said.
Very rightly, it has to be practiced time and again to make sure that everybody knows what they're supposed to do. So moving on to mass races and mass participation, and I know you've been working very closely with that. So Dr. Anjali, tell us, what are the preparations that go into mass races, and what are the things you have in place? Is it just for the race? Is it for the spectators also? And what is the thought process behind everything that goes through?
So mass participation is like a totally different ball game. I would sum up what Sir and Doctor said. It is, if I've got to divide it into two parts, one is the part which is taken care of, or what we call as the medical action plan, which involves not only the runner participants. So here I'm going to talk about the runners because I'm involved with a certain amount of races. So where we mean the participation can range from say around 10,000 participants, which is runners on the race day, to a 50,000 participation, which is like a race as to the capacity of a Tata Mumbai Marathon. So one is something that we do for the runners on the field, which is called as the medical action plan, which is designed like probably 6 months before, as in the countdown starts from 6 months before the race, from where it actually starts from the point as to what were the learnings from the last year, what were the events that happened at the last year. There is so much of statistics that goes into it. What kind of eventualities happened at what points, what was the temperature, what was the nature of the participants, what was the environmental factors, how much were the spectators, at what point were the spectators. So a lot of statistics goes into it, and that preparation starts like a countdown, which is 6 months from before the race. The medical action plan not only involves how many number of participants are you going to cater to, but what are the what is going to be the strength of the medical team, what are the kind of people you are going to involve into the medical team basis the kind of nature of the event, how many what are the consumables that you are going to place on the route, what are the infrastructures that you are going to raise, what are the essential elements, like I mean how many AEDs, strategically how are you going to place it where, which area, what are going to be the hydration points, not that okay I can place the hydration anywhere that I want which is convenient to me, but maybe a slope, a temperature zone area which is like very arid, very hot. All of these factors are taken into consideration, and that's how the medical action plan is designed. What also goes into it is how many ambulances are you going to place, where are you going to place those ambulances, what is the kind of the staff members that you are going to train, where are you going to place those staff members. So all of these things, sensitization of the other participants or probably the people who are involved into setting up the operations, at what junctions are you going to do. So all of these things go into kind of planning for the from the medical point of view. Now there's something what we feel is very essential for the participants as well to take care of. So a countdown, a medical action plan, as much as it's important for a medical fraternity to design, the same ways it's very essential for the athletes, or for in my case I would say the runners, to be able to design. Now what we call that is like what rightly sir said, that we have to go through a annual health check. So a runner, whether it is a novice or an accomplished runner, so the more you have been participating, the more you have been training, that means the more you have put your heart under stress, right? So you need to kind of evaluate your training plans. Is there adequate training, adequate screening, adequate rest, adequate hydration? Have you kind of looked after your attire that you are going to wear for the day? This is again, this comes into the countdown. So whether it's 6 months, 3 weeks, 1 day, and what is also important is the post. So while we plan the medical action program, what is also essential for us, that after the race we all sit down and understand what had, as in what we call as the medical debrief. Because if you don't, jot down all those eventualities or the facts of the race immediately, it's all gone, it's all washed out. So you can't be taking those learnings for the next participation. So this stands true for an individual athlete as well. This stands true for a medical partner as well. This stands true for a doctor as well, as to what are you going to be planning for the future to avoid eventualities. So all of these things, are a part of what we call as how we set up things for the medical fraternity. Now, the very interesting point, and I'm talking from the Indian aspect or the Southeast Asian aspect, is that the number of participation in the past 10 years, I'm again talking about the mass participation, which has elite athletes, which has amateur athletes, the participation in India has gone up 300 to 400 times more than the Western world. So the number of cases that we see, or the number of cases that we hear, whether it is in the gym or whether it is on field in any program, in any of the sports, is because um, the, if I may call it, the fad of getting active, the fad of beating the urbanization, starting late or starting early but overdoing, all of these factors are quite important to be taken care of. So when I say that the participation percentage has gone up by 300 to 400%, means that the number of cases has gone up. That's why we keep hearing, keep listening, oh, this has happened, this has happened, this has happened. Myself personally, in these past 10, 15 years, I must have witnessed a cardiac arrest, myocardial infarction, people we have rescued and gone through brain surgeries, all in mass participation ranging from a 10,000 participants to 50,000 participants. Would every race have that? Yes, every race would have that. So the bottom line is preparation. The most important is communication. Communication with the team, communication during emergency, staying calm, knowing what exactly you are supposed to do. So in our case, where would the ambulance land? Where would it go? Whether it's the police, whether it is the volunteers, whether it is my team, the sensitization of that, and how we are able to save an individual's life. We don't want eventualities to happen, but certain controllables, non-controllables are, I mean, we can't avoid certain things. So that's where the whole preparation from our side and sensitization from the participants or the individual's side or the sports person side is equally important.
Thank you so much. We're just going to take one quick question. This is for you, Dr. Ravi. With like she said, that people are now trying, like, getting very active, and it's with marathons, it's with going to the gym, and especially, like, the gym going population. There's no doping control, and steroids are abused, out front. Do you think that has any scientifically, does that have any effect on the number of cardiac arrests that we are seeing through the gym training?
Hello? Yeah. So when we talk about steroids, so let me share a personal experience to begin with. So there was this 32-year-old friend of mine, a business colleague, thin, lean, no BP, no sugar, no cholesterol, no family history. Suddenly one day I get a call at 4 o'clock in the night that he has collapsed. So he had been taking some antacids from a local doctor for 2 days for a retrosternal kind of burning. And finally I had to reach when he had collapsed. So I could reach within 10 minutes, resuscitated him and rushed him to the nearby hospital. And angiography showed that he had a 100% block in one of the arteries. So we are trying to dig out the cause, and later what we learned when he came back to say the ward or normalcy, that he mentioned that he had been overusing steroids for more than last 6 months, intramuscular steroids and growth hormones. So there's definitely a causal relationship between steroid abuse and coronary artery disease. Steroids definitely can contribute to high blood pressure. It causes enlargement of the heart. it accelerates a pre-existing disease. So if someone is having a 5% plaque, it will speed it up. The disease which is going to come after 10 years, it will come in 10 months. Okay? So it accelerates the disease. It can cause plaque rupture, like I explained. So a person with a 10% block can suddenly have a 100% block if he is misusing steroids. So, and if I have to tell you the incidence, so every 17 seconds there is a heart attack and stroke happening in India. So I was trying to give you an example, but it won't be relevant now. But I feel steroids definitely is a causative factor for coronary artery disease, and it can trigger heart attacks. It can start a new disease, or it can accelerate a pre-existing disease.
So in the news, like we would see, somebody in the gym died of a heart attack, and then everybody's parents are saying, okay, you don't stop going to the gym, don't do these kind of training and everything. But that's the narrative that is built, and nobody looks at the real reasons behind why such and such a thing is happening. Just because you go to the gym and do some HIIT training does not mean you'll have a cardiac arrest. But the steroid abuse and everything is never highlighted in the media.
Steroids is one thing, anabolic steroids, but how many physical trainers and coaches are here, strength conditioning? Yeah, so I'll tell you what is the problem also. Most of the thing, it's very rare that you'll see that an elite athlete dies in the gym. Okay, elite athlete, because the cardiopulmonary adaptations are so good, and that is how they have gone. They have been conditioned. The problem with celebrities, everybody going for shortcut, or people. That's where the steroids come in, sir. And what is happening is with poor conditioning, you're stressing the heart. He also gave the analogy of an engine. तो अगर अपना 800 cc के उस पे अगर आप 2 ton का सामान अगर डालोगे, that's how much you're loading the engine. So you are going to damage the myocardium, and the restriction of blood flow is going to be there to the to the coronary arteries. So that is one, and also most important is I believe that if you look at the deaths generally, like I said, one is lack of sleep. We looked at the marathon runners, around one we found. The other, only like we said, some questions we wanted probably on COVID, because COVID we're still not sure. It's still in the early nascent phases. More data and research is yet to come out. But we know that myocarditis, like which you mentioned, is there, so that can be a cause of. So I think that screening is very important. But most importantly, why I've said coaches and trainers, because gym mein, it's the trainers who are there. So make sure your athlete is warmed up properly, hydrated properly, has had proper sleep. They are not on unnecessary anabolic steroids. They're not smokers, and push them slowly. ठीक है? नहीं तो otherwise just to that one upmanship, मैं उससे ज़्यादा lift कर सकता हूँ, मैं उससे ज़्यादा कर सकता हूँ, that will cause a heart attack and maybe a death. So sir, you want?
To end with, I would say sudden cardiac deaths are rising. So most of the heart attacks happen in blocks which are less than 50%. We tend to get scared when I have a positive stress test. There's a 70% block, but the blocks which has reached a level of 70-80%, they have grown in our body for a decade or two. They are kind of stable blocks. But a 10 or a 20% block, which is not detected on any routine screening, they can suddenly rupture, and within seconds it can cause a heart attack. Contributing factors could be a bad gene, of family history of heart attacks at a young age, poor lifestyle, smoking. Okay, so to end with, screening definitely once in a year is advisable for those who have a strong family history or a bad lifestyle. And see, there was in our medical school, we used to be taught, say, 25 years ago when I was a first year student. So that time we were told that heart disease is a grandfather's disease. After the age of 55 in male sex, there is an increased risk of heart attacks. But now what we see today, I see more than 2 young people less than 30 years old having a heart attack every week. And it's not uncommon to see a grandparent standing outside the ICU waiting for a grandchild to recover from a heart attack. So that's a common scenario nowadays. Okay? So I would end with this.
Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for the wonderful